when Newsom does all his videos and his vlogs and his address to the nation, I was like, do one good thing for taxpayers in California and then go after Trump. One piece of legislation or one move that would help your average California taxpayer, and then you can Trump verbally. But Gavin Newsom's a sociopath. I don't think people really fully understand who that guy is and who that guy isn't. He is nothing. You can always tell he's full of shit when he does his damn and hell. Like, these damn people come here to work hard. Hell, I don't care what I sound like right now. Hot damn. When he says damn and hell, that's his false sort of he does a feigned outrage thing.
Adam Carolla has once again drawn attention to what he believes are serious problems facing California under Governor Gavin Newsom. Carolla argues that the state is under growing pressure, pointing to issues like crime, homelessness, and economic challenges as signs that leadership decisions have had lasting consequences. At the same time, there is increasing talk that Newsom may be considering a future presidential run. If that becomes reality, critics say his record in California will face even closer national scrutiny. Carolla and others have begun revisiting past debates and public exchanges to highlight concerns about how Newsom governs. They argue that California could serve as a preview of what his leadership might look like on a national level. Supporters see ambition and experience, while critics see warning signs. The discussion has reignited interest in a fiery exchange between Carolla and Newsom from more than a decade ago, an exchange that some believe still reflects the larger political divide today. If you're interested in direct, outspoken political commentary, stay tuned as we revisit that moment and examine how it connects to today's debate.
Americans in the state of California, roughly half of Latino families have no access to a checking account or an ATM, things we take for granted. They don't have a checking account.
What's wrong with them?
And well, because they don't have the resources to sock those things away.
Why do we have?
A lot of different reasons.
Why those two groups don't have access?
A lot of it just happens to be that we can talk about.
Flawed?
No, they're hardly flawed, but they're struggling.
Genetically
making
flawed.
their word. Hardly, not absolutely.
But okay, do Asians have this problem?
I mean, a lot of communities have. A lot of whites have these problems.
Oh, but that's not just black and Hispanic.
No, but
why did you bring up black and Hispanic?
Because the magnitude is ominous.
But why so many of them?
It just happens to be the magnitude.
That's the way God planned it?
Not at all.
Well, what happened to them?
There are a lot of issues, and that the communities are struggling. A lot
why
of new
are they struggling?
A lot of different reasons. The only reason why is the magnitude of the problem.
There's so many more.
The magnitude in percentage
But there's no way to figure out how that happened.
Critics describe that exchange as a classic example of Gavin Newsom relying on polished lines and carefully chosen statistics to make his case. On the surface, the delivery sounded confident and controlled. But when Adam Carolla pushed for direct answers and clearer details, the conversation reportedly shifted. The smooth presentation began to slow, and the responses seemed less certain. According to Carolla, the issue goes deeper than one debate. He argues that Newsom's approach focuses more on image than on lasting solutions. In his view, projecting concern and compassion is not the same as solving real problems. Carolla believes the emphasis often appears to be on how leadership looks to the public rather than on whether policies are truly improving people's daily lives. For Carolla, that difference is critical. He maintains that leadership should be judged by measurable results, not by well-crafted speeches or symbolic gestures. When the public image does not match the outcomes people experience, it naturally leads to doubts. The bigger question, he suggests, is whether the priority is genuine progress or simply strong political positioning.
What did he say right after this interview was done? What did he tell you?
How could I do this?
Yeah, he's a sociopath. He does not... You have to be a sociopath to answer questions that way, because I asked him 17 different times what is going on with these groups that they don't have access to checking accounts, which, by the way, is BS. I mean, the notion that half the black and Hispanics, California is half Hispanic. You know how many people wouldn't have access to a checking account if half of them? So he gets out of the gate with BS.
Adam Carolla has openly criticized Gavin Newsom, accusing him of relying on carefully framed messaging rather than straightforward facts. Carolla argues that many of Newsom's statements sound strong at first, but when examined more closely, they don't always hold up. In his view, This is not or careless communication. He believes it is a calculated effort to guide public opinion and shift attention away from deeper concerns. Carolla also claims that when Newsom is pushed to provide clear details or defend specific claims, his confidence appears to weaken. Instead of giving direct, detailed answers, Carolla says the governor often uses broad language or changes the focus of discussion. To Carolla, that pattern raises serious questions about transparency and trust. At the heart of his criticism is the idea that leadership should be built on clarity and accountability. Carolla maintains that when presentation takes priority over precision, people begin to doubt what they're being told. In his view, the public deserves more than polished speeches. They deserve clear explanations, solid evidence, and leaders who are willing to stand firmly behind their words.
By the way, this is not what you want in a leader. If I came, because he presented a problem. So if I came in to your home and I said, you got a big termite problem in this house, and then you went, how do we eradicate it? And I go, it just is. You know, and then you go, I know, but I want to fix it. How do we fix this problem? That's just the way it is. And then you go, but how do we get the termites out of the house? I go, a lot of houses have termites. And you keep asking the person, they won't provide an answer. It's his job to fix this stuff. Okay, you're in charge of California.
Adam Carolla has been clear about his doubts regarding Gavin Newsom and the idea of him serving as president. Carolla's main concern is what he sees as a lack of practical, results-driven solutions. He points to California as a real-world example, arguing that many long-standing issues in the state still have not been fully addressed. For him, that record raises serious questions about readiness for national leadership. Carolla is especially critical of how Newsom responds when asked for detailed plans. He claims that instead of offering specific, step-by-step solutions, Newsom often relies on broad and carefully crafted language that sounds reassuring but avoids firm commitments. In Carolla's view, this approach may work in short interviews or speeches, but it does not replace clear action. At the core of his argument is the belief that strong leadership requires more than polished communication. Carolla says it demands transparency, measurable outcomes, and a willingness to directly face hard questions. Without those qualities, he believes it becomes difficult for voters to feel confident that bigger national challenges will be handled differently or more effectively under the same leadership style.
Here, Governor, why did you shut the beaches in California during COVID?
Yeah, I think we all were working on information at the time. We had no basis of deeply understanding the virus. I think they did the same thing.
So you didn't know anything, so why'd you shut the beaches?
States like Florida.
If you didn't know anything, why'd you shut the beaches?
Well, we didn't know. Yeah, because people were concerned early in the pandemic. Information was coming out as it relates to how it was transferred, the disease, and people were cautious, trying to keep people alive. And I should say this:
so you didn't let them go in the sunshine and get vitamin
California
D and exercise. So you shut the beaches. Okay, and you arrested a guy who was paddleboarding in the bay.
Health, wealth, and
yeah, any science behind that? Any science at all behind shutting outdoor dining? Why'd you shut down outdoor dining?
Look at him, dude. Ugh.
Go ahead.
A heated exchange unfolded between Adam Carolla and Governor Gavin Newsom over the decision to close California's beaches during the COVID-19 pandemic. The shutdown affected millions of residents and disrupted daily life across the state. Given the scale of the decision, many expected a clear and detailed explanation for why such strict measures were necessary. According to Carolla's account, that clarity never fully came. Newsom defended the move by saying he followed the public health guidance available at the time, which stressed limiting gatherings and reducing close contact. On the surface, that reasoning aligned with a broader effort to slow the spread of the virus. However, Carolla questioned whether the beach closures were logically consistent, especially since outdoor spaces were often described as lower risk compared to indoor environments. For Carolla, the debate was about more than just beaches. He saw it as part of a larger issue involving how decisions were made and explained to the public. When policies have such a widespread impact, he believes leaders must provide firm justification and accept full accountability. Without that level of transparency, he argues, doubts naturally begin to grow about whether those choices were truly necessary or properly thought through.
How much have things gotten better or worse while Newsom's been your governor? Have you seen at least something getting better?
I can't think of anything. I'm trying not to use too much hyperbole here. The stuff you see is homelessness. And the other thing that's you see in California, which is sort of counterintuitive, is garbage. Lots of garbage, lots of graffiti, lots of filth, just filth. And it's weird because California, Golden State and all that kind of stuff, beaches and sunshine and everything. The major cities are dirty. Really dirty. It's homeless and just garbage and graffiti and sort of blight and filth everywhere, which is weird and depressing. And of course, gas is, $5.50 a gallon with the worst roads.
Several well-known entertainers have spoken out about the state of California under Governor Gavin Newsom, saying they feel the quality of everyday life has declined. Some actors and comedians who once praised the state's energy and beauty now express concern about rising homelessness and a growing sense of disorder in major cities. They argue that areas once viewed as symbols of success and opportunity no longer feel the same. Bill Maher, for instance, shared a personal story about visiting San Francisco and nearly stepping in human waste while walking through the city. He used that moment to illustrate what he believes is a broader public sanitation problem. Stories like his have added fuel to ongoing debates about safety, cleanliness, and overall living conditions in parts of the state. Critics say these examples reflect more than isolated incidents. In their view, they point to deeper challenges that have not been fully addressed. The frustration, they argue, is not simply about how things look, but about whether leadership has done enough to restore order, improve conditions, and rebuild public confidence.
Gavin Newsom does all his videos and his vlogs and his address to the nation. I was like, do one good thing for taxpayers in California and then go after Trump. One piece of legislation or one move that would help your average California taxpayer, and then you can assassinate Trump verbally. But Gavin Newsom's a sociopath. I don't think people really fully understand who that guy is and who that guy isn't. He is nothing.
Adam Carolla has made it clear that his frustration with Gavin Newsom goes back years. Much of his criticism focuses on what he sees as the governor's overall record in California. Carolla has publicly challenged Newsom to name even one major policy that has clearly improved everyday life for taxpayers. In his view, that question has never been answered in a convincing way. Carolla often points to California's high tax rates, which are among the steepest in the country. He argues that when residents are paying that much, they naturally expect strong public services, reliable infrastructure, and a high quality of life. But according to him, many taxpayers don't feel they're getting the level of value they were promised. Instead, he believes there is a widening gap between what people contribute financially and what they see in return. For Carolla, the issue goes beyond taxes alone. He says it comes down to accountability and results. If the public is investing heavily in their state, leadership should be able to show clear, measurable improvements. Without that proof, he argues, frustration is bound to grow.
He'll talk about trans rights and sports if he's in one setting and then say it's unfair in another setting. I don't think people fully understand who that guy is. I sat in a room with him for an hour and tried to talk to him, and there's nothing there. And the idea that he has designs on, sort of global domination is insane, because he's basically he's like a guy who runs the world's worst taco stand. He makes the worst taco.
Adam Carolla has taken his criticism of Gavin Newsom even further, at one point describing him as politically hollow. Carolla argues that Newsom often adjusts his message depending on the audience in front of him. In his view, the governor can sound very different when speaking to progressive groups compared to when he addresses a broader or more moderate crowd. That, Carolla says, raises concerns about consistency and authenticity. One example Carolla frequently mentions involves the term Latinx. Newsom publicly stated that he had not used the term, but critics later pointed to past remarks where he appeared to use it while speaking to more progressive audiences. For Carolla, moments like that suggest a pattern of shifting language to match the expectations of the room. He believes this kind of flexibility goes beyond normal political messaging and starts to look like calculated positioning. At the core of Carolla's argument is the idea that strong leadership requires steady principles. He maintains that voters want clarity and consistency, not changing tones based on who is listening. When words and past statements do not line up, he argues, it weakens trust and creates doubt about what a leader truly stands for.
You can always tell he's full of when he does his damn and hell. Like, these damn people come here to work hard. Hell, I don't care what I sound like right now. Hot damn. When he says damn and hell, that's his false sort of he does a feigned outrage thing. You know, people would say the same about Trump. They go, he's a sociopath. He's whatever. Okay. All granted. But Trump always talks about taxes and border, the economy and gas prices and stuff like that. If I heard Newsom go, gas prices in California are way too high, I got to bring them down, I don't care what it's going to take, I'm going to do it, then I would go, well, all right, well, the sociopath makes a point. But he never says that. He blames the oil companies. And it turns out it's not the oil companies gouging us, it's your over.
Adam Carolla has also criticized what he calls California's overwhelming bureaucracy. He argues that layers of regulations and growing restrictions have made it harder for major industries to function smoothly. In his view, the business climate has become so complex and costly that it discourages growth instead of supporting it. Carolla believes the oil industry has been hit particularly hard. He points to stricter policies, rising compliance costs, and high taxes as factors that have increased pressure on energy companies. According to him, some firms have decided that operating in California is no longer practical. He notes instances where major oil companies have reduced their presence or chosen to leave the state, citing high expenses and uncertainty about future regulations. For Carolla, the concern goes beyond one industry. He argues that when well-known companies pull back or exit, it sends a broader signal to other businesses. That, he says, can lead to fewer jobs, less investment, and questions about the state's long-term economic direction. In his view, the bigger issue is whether current leadership is creating an environment where businesses can thrive or one where they feel pushed out.
You know, I argued with him about many subjects, but one of the arguments I was actually thinking about today is I said, where are the dads? Why don't you tell these people, stay behind and raise your kids? Now, for him, he thinks that's a hate crime. So if you say, so what Gavin Newsom does is he goes, black people and brown people are suffering inordinately, in much higher levels than everyone else. And then you say, why are they suffering? And then he says, everyone's suffering. Why did you only bring up those two groups? And then he says, because they're suffering so much more. And then I say, why are they suffering so much more? And then he goes into a long-winded sort of hodgepodge of racial missteps of this country and acts from the 60s.
Taken together, Adam Carolla's criticisms paint a sharp and critical picture of Governor Gavin Newsom's leadership. From shifting narratives and unanswered questions to controversial policies and growing public frustration, Carolla argues that Newsom's tenure often prioritizes style over substance. For him, the bigger issue isn't just what the governor says, it's what has actually been achieved during his time in office. Rising taxes, companies leaving the state, concerns about quality of life, and ongoing questions about accountability have all contributed to growing skepticism among critics. Carolla views California as a kind of preview for what leadership on a larger scale might look like, and that prospect raises serious concerns in his mind. Whether people agree with him or not, his observations have added fuel to the ongoing debate about competence, credibility, and real results in government. The discussion around Newsom shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, it is intensifying, and voices like Carolla's ensure that scrutiny and accountability remain front and center. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you found this discussion interesting, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.